What's going up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Cloud Pilot podcast. In this episode, we have another amazing person with us today to talk about hybrid and multi-cloud certification. Talking about him, he is a Google Cloud Certified Fellow, and he was the 29th person in the world to be certified as a GCP Certified Fellow. And he is one of my most favorite person. And let me welcome David McDaniel to the Cloud Pilot podcast. Welcome, Mac. Thank you so much for accepting my invite and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Udesh. I'm really happy to be here.
So, Mac, people who don't know Mac is also my colleague. We work in the same company, which is a Google Cloud Premier partner, and I love working with Mac.
Same here. I love your enthusiasm and the fact that you're so open with your community and wanting to teach and learn. So it's awesome.
Thank you so much, Mac. So, Mac, why don't you take a few moments to say something about yourself, about your background, because the audience would be eager to know how much experience you've got.
Thank you. Yeah, I was your true computer nerd from way back when. Somebody put a computer in front of me when I was 11 years old, and it changed my life. This was a home-built box computer with a television as a monitor and a keyboard. The mouse hadn't been invented yet. And in 15 minutes, I realized this is the thing I have to do with my life. So it totally changed my life. Changed schools, went into technology. I started working at the time, the number 2 computer manufacturer in the world, Digital Equipment Corporation, way back in 1982. So this year being 2022, it will be 40 years in the industry, which is crazy to think about. So I started when the internet wasn't a thing. Email, you had to tell how to route to different servers. It was a whole different world. Working on not quite mainframes, but what they called mid-ranges at the time. So I learned a lot, started as an intern basically, and worked my way into full-time very quickly. And then just kind of taken off from there. The weird thing is, I thought after being at Digital almost 10 years, I thought this is where I'm going to retire. I love it. And then the world changed and they didn't change with it. So ended up moving around. I've done a lot of consulting and a lot of product development. So I've kind of got both sides of that coin and really like it.
40 years, that's just crazy.
It's insane. I don't know why I'm still going, but I still have a passion for it. So to me, it's all about finding your passion and just living it every day.
Absolutely. The same goes for me. That's the principle which drives me every day.
That's why I think we get along so well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mac, currently you're working as our chief architect. So how is it to work as a chief architect? You have 40 years of experience. How has the journey, from the transition from the first position to a chief architect right now, how is it? And how is your current working?
So I think the biggest thing is about being a chief architect is I get to apply those almost 40 years of experience to dealing with customers, their challenges, understanding their environment, applying empathy to them. So I think the first part of my career was all about learning different industries, different technologies, all that stuff. So now it's much more about applying that experience and making things happen for customers.
So there would be, I believe there would be a lot of challenges, being as an architect, because we deal with different, types of customers and each one would be different than the other. So, what are those typical challenges you have faced as a chief architect, or at least as an architect?
Yeah, a lot of them come down to people being kind of afraid of what they don't know. The cloud has gotten so many different reputations. And one of them is that it's totally different and so easy to do that you don't need the same number of staff or the same skills. And I've seen through many cloud projects that's not really true. People's jobs do change, their skills need to change to adopt to the cloud, but it's not like you come and migrate to the cloud and then half your IT staff gets laid off. And that's really a big one. because people are afraid of losing their jobs. Nobody
Yeah.
ever wants to lose a job, and it makes them very hesitant to move. So I think that reassuring people that they're not going to lose their job, understanding how to transition their skill sets from a more on-prem into a cloud environment really helps them a lot.
Basically, you have faced a lot of challenges as an architect. So there would be a lot of challenges you have faced in the entire learning process, from being nobody in IT to, something big in IT, which I'm sure you are. So, what are those different, learning opportunities, which I would like to call, rather than just challenges? What are those learning opportunities you had during the entire process?
I mean, just my love of learning has really been a huge benefit to me. It's just something that I like learning new things. So being able to pick up a book or a video or get your hands dirty and try it, that's my favorite way of learning. The challenges, some of the challenges have been that a lot of educational material is very basic. Yes, it will show you how to use this tool or that service in a hello world way.
Yeah.
And that's helpful, first time doing it, that's helpful. But as soon as you go beyond that, you get into this black hole of how do I do something real?
Yep.
There's no companies out here running hello world.
Yeah.
So they need, real solutions, real CI/CD, real Kubernetes clusters.
Yeah.
So there is a big difference there. I think one of the big opportunities is cloud study jams and meetups, and something we've been a part of for a while with Google, where we were one of the first North American partners selected to do cloud study jams. And it's just a monthly thing we do where we go through quick labs and bring people on the journey.
Yeah.
And then I ran for a long time a 2,000 person AWS meetup group
Wow.
that I founded 7 years ago. And now we're kind of transitioning that into a hybrid and multi-cloud meetup group.
So, Mac, I think you are almost fully certified on GCP, including the hybrid multi-cloud, being the Google Cloud Certified Fellow. What is those experience getting those certifications on GCP? I think you have completed almost every certifications, and you might have known what is required for which thing. And perhaps if you could talk about your experience getting those certifications and how that has helped you in your career.
Yeah. So fortunately, having a lot of AWS experience really helped me there. There are certainly differences among all the clouds,
Yep.
and some good differences, some not so good differences. The trick was learning. So I had much more experience in AWS than I did in GCP when I started getting my GCP certs. And when I got all my certs, I did have a majority of them, but now they've added more. So now I'm roughly about half. I have 6 certifications, including the Cloud Fellow. But I think there's 11 maybe now.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few. So the biggest thing was applying my experience in AWS to GCP, and being able to translate kind of the differences, how different VPC networking is, how different IAM is, and then a lot of the similarities of firewalls and VMs and things like that. So it was really just a matter of kind of mapping it in my head and doing some practicing and studying. Within the first 3 or 4 months of moving to GCP, I had 5 certifications. So I worked very hard on studying for those. And now I'm going through all the recertifications for those.
Yep. Definitely a very good learning process to get recertified. In fact, I
Yeah.
also have to get myself recertified on the associate cloud engineering this year.
Yeah, it's a good one to have. You've got your architect, so
Yep.
I would think maybe going off and doing a different direction and going maybe data or security would be a good route.
Yeah.
There is a fair amount of overlap between many of them.
Yep.
They all have bits that talk about security. They all have bits that talk about networking, bits that talk about IAM. So I think it was kind of an advantage of doing them very quickly because
Yep.
I was able to reuse that knowledge from one to the other.
Yeah. In fact, I'm planning for my security cert next.
Excellent. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
It's challenging. The one that scares me the most is the networking, honestly. I feel like my networking skills are really just good enough to be dangerous. And everything I've heard is the networking certification is the real deal.
Yeah. So somewhere I have also heard that DevOps is the biggest thing.
I did the DevOps one. I didn't think it was super challenging, but that was 2 years ago. So
Uh,
I know they keep enhancing
yep.
the exams as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
I just did my research on my PCA,
Uh-huh.
and it was different.
Yep.
Definitely a lot more Kubernetes
And
focused, more security,
yep.
more scenario based questions.
Yeah. Awesome. So, one of the most trending and important, essential, I don't know how to highlight its importance. Anthos, the word itself speaks for it. And you are one of the most, reliable experts in the world for Anthos. Literally what GCP certified fellows are advocating for. So, how do we start learning Anthos? How do we become a master in Anthos?
So again, I very much advocate hands-on approach. There's a ton of documentation out there, so it's all free, available on the Google site. If you really think about what Anthos is, it's a new, enhanced, commercialized distribution of Kubernetes. And of course, Google being the creator and open source releaser of Kubernetes, I think they just have a huge advantage because they've been running it longer than anybody.
Yeah.
So to me, Anthos is just like, hey, we're gonna run GKE, but we're gonna let you run it on VMware, on bare metal, in AWS, in Azure. So the biggest part about Anthos operationally is its Kubernetes.
Yep.
And then you add in things like Anthos Service Mesh, which is the commercialized version of Istio, and
Yep.
Anthos Config Management, which is an amazingly valuable piece of software. It allows you to really deploy Anthos clusters, security policies, namespace management, RBAC, all those things on a scale where if you're running 1 or 2 clusters, you might do everything by hand. But as soon as you go past 5 or 10 clusters, you don't want to do this by hand
Yep.
anymore. You want
Absolutely.
automation. So that's a huge thing. From the kind of the installation side, it is a whole different ballgame. You don't install it like any roll your own Kubernetes distribution.
Yeah.
So in VMware, it's a different installer, and it takes advantage of the hypervisor, automatically creates VMs, load balancers, everything you need, sets up all the networking, and does that all for you. On bare metal, you're running on machines, it still does everything for you. Once you've set up connectivity between the machines, it's going to create your load balancer VIPs, do all the software installation. You're not sitting there installing etcd and API server and kubelet and all of those things. It's all done for you. So to me, Anthos represents a way to have a pretty managed service experience while not in the cloud. And then Anthos and AWS and Azure is a command line interface right now, but you're not doing anything really difficult. It's a G Cloud, create the cluster, and you're kind of off to the races. So really a huge advance in managing, installing, configuring, upgrading Kubernetes clusters.
So, Mac, can you tell us about your experience getting the Google Cloud Certified Fellowship? Because that's what Anthos is for. The knowledge on Anthos is tested over the Certified Fellow exam. And can you talk about your experience, how the entire process is, how it was for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So it's a invitation only nominated process. So you have to get invited to apply. And first there's kind of writing some essay questions, answering some questions about your experience and what you know about hybrid and multi-cloud computing, what you know about Kubernetes. Once you get past there, when I was doing the fellow program, when I was just getting in, they had 9 hours of technical testing through Quick Labs. So I had to create pod security policies, instantiate Istio, do service meshes, do config management, binary authentication. There's a ton of very technical things you had to do to a Anthos cluster to make it the way they asked you to. And then once you pass that, it was a 2-hour panel interview with 3 Googlers, and they talk they ask you questions, and they give you a business case, a case study to study for a few days. And then you are supposed to present some solution diagrams, architectures, and talk about some of the different aspects. They talk to you in business, leadership, technical acumen. Sorry, I said that wrong. It's leadership, technical acumen, and business concepts. So you're asked about things like, how do you reduce cost? How do you ensure compliance across any region you're in, like GDPR? Every country has its own data sovereignty and governance rules. So you have to be able to at least talk to all those aspects. And how do you run Anthos and potentially other services when there is no GCP region in that country? So it's a very broad panel interview with a very deep technical test. Now, I understand they have changed the test a little bit, so there is no 9 hours of technical testing anymore. It's just kind of the essay and then the panel interview. But it did definitely test me. Honestly, I got off the meet with the Google team, and I thought, well, I just wasted 4 months of my time because there's no way I'm going to pass. So when I received the email saying I had passed, I was flabbergasted.
I mean, you'd really deserve it.
I would hope so, with 38 years of experience at the time. It did really test me, though, and I appreciate that, because I also took away from it, and they send you feedback, which is good. So I took away from that some areas where I could still improve. Just because I have a ton of experience doesn't mean I know everything.
Yeah, I mean, getting a feedback is definitely something, a crucial piece which we can use to improve ourselves. So Mac, do you recommend any kind of roadmap or something, to learn Anthos and then, be a Google Cloud Certified Fellow?
Yeah, I would say, truly understand how Google works, how Google Cloud works, get some experience with Kubernetes itself, because, under the covers, Anthos is Kubernetes. So, I started out much more on the management installation side, but now I'm spreading out and learning much more, getting much more deep into Kubernetes itself. As we talk to clients and customer and prospects, they are asking lots more in-depth questions that I'm still learning about Kubernetes. PVs and stateful sets, and how you manage their life cycle, and security and backups and all that. So I would say a good place to start would be like a certified Kubernetes developer, along with at least your associate cloud engineer or your professional cloud architect would be good. And then you really have to have pretty solid Linux skills to understand how to, or VMware skills to understand how to use the installation. And then you have to go from there.
Awesome. So Mac, do you, have any advices or suggestions to talk about, how do we prepare for cloud interview? A lot of people don't really have much guidance on preparing for these cloud related role interviews. What do you have to tell about it?
That's a great question. I think one of the things I look for when I'm interviewing people is the desire to learn, because with the cloud especially, you're constantly learning. GCP was not the same 2 years ago when I started in it as it is now. So keeping up with GCP is a challenge because so much is changing. They're adding so much all the time and making it better. So there's always that aspect. So learning is a key thing. Fundamentals of, I know I'm old. So when I learned software, it was all about requirements. So I think that still applies in a lot of areas. Whether you're building software or whether you're building infrastructure, understand what the need is and match the need. And in interviewing for that, listen to the question and answer the question. That is the biggest thing that frustrates me when I ask a candidate a question and they kind of just go around it or throw word salad at me. So that's kind of when people start just throwing lingo, it's kind of a sign they may not know what they're talking about. So admit what you don't know. We don't expect everybody to know everything.
Yeah.
I just interviewed somebody this morning and I was trying to get him to eventually admit that he didn't know something. And it was good when he did. So nobody knows everything, but if you can admit you don't know everything, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, totally agree. Like, this piece of advice is gold. I actually admitted that I didn't know Terraform while I was interviewing for this position. But, after talking to the interviewer, he told me that I actually knew Terraform.
Well, that's great. And I think a lot of what we're looking for is people that have a great attitude, have enthusiasm, and want to have fun doing this.
Yeah.
We can teach skills. We can teach you Terraform. We can teach you Google Cloud. It's great if you have that experience, but having the desire to learn, having the enthusiasm, the ability to work hard and learn and grow is really the biggest thing.
Yep, absolutely. And, as we are coming to a wrap, what advice do you have to give to our audience?
I mean, ideally, the people that are looking at going to cloud have a passion for it, have an enthusiasm, a desire to learn, and they find solving problems rewarding. And that's what I've always looked at is I don't really care how hard the problem is. I'm going to find out a way to solve it. And sometimes it takes a couple tries, and that's okay. It's really just about being satisfied that you are making a difference, you're contributing to something, and you're making somebody's life or even a business a better place to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mac, for coming to our podcast and talking about GCP certification, your experience, and all this piece of advice were gold. I truly have to admit that. And thank you so much for giving your presence. And this opportunity is not really something that everybody gets. And I'm truly thankful for you. And any last words?
Yeah, I want to say that what you're doing is really inspirational, and it's inspired me to go further. And I appreciate everything you're doing, Udesh. It's really amazing, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And I hope you have found this very helpful. The IT industry is booming, and there are a lot of opportunities which you can fetch if you have the right skill sets. And this podcast is one of the best podcasts I've ever taken, to be honest. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have found this helpful. We'll catch up soon in another podcast with another guest and another topic. Till then, it's me, the Cloud Pilot, signing off.